Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I am the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Maximize Your ERP with the Transformation Management System, presented by our experts at FreightPOP. Before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, you can ask any questions you have throughout the webinar. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the questions section or the chat box of your GoToWebinar, and we're going to hold all questions till the end of the presentation. We're also recording this presentation today for all attendees, as well as those who registered but were unable to attend. You'll receive the recording in your inbox tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow morning if you're on the West Coast. And finally, we'd appreciate your participation in our closing poll and survey question. With that said, we're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions, and we're thrilled that you've taken some time out of your busy day to be with us. We're going to fulfill your vision of a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing you with tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So whether you're here to explore a new solution or you're just here to learn, do not hesitate to ask any questions you have. And as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. We encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and check out our YouTube channel where we'll post our recorded webinars like this. And that's enough for me. I'm going to hand it over to John, Holly, and Austin for the main event.
Thanks so much, Courtney. Thank you so much for the introduction. Everyone who's on the call, thank you for being here. We sincerely appreciate it. Appreciate your time and interest in learning a little bit more about FreightPOP today. The goal here for Holly, Austin, and I is to kind of help us or help you understand how to maximize your ERP with a TMS, right? What those two solutions in conjunction can really do and provide for your business. Ultimately, we want to provide a really high-level overview of what it is that FreightPOP does. And then later we'll pass it over to Austin to run more of an in-depth demo where we'll actually go into the live site and kind of run around in there and try to see what we can uncover. So hopefully you get something out of this webinar today. And we just, again, thank you so much for being here. I'll kind of kick off introductions. My name is John Freeman. I head up partnerships here at FreightPOP. You know, we've been really fortunate to be able to work with SWK and the folks over there heading up the Acumatica and Sage practices.
I am Holly Heitman. I'm the marketing manager at FreightPOP. I've been here about a year, but I come from a software background, software marketing. I've been in the space about 6-7 years. So we have some really exciting stuff for you guys that I'm excited to share today. I'll pass it to Austin.
Yep, my name is Austin McLean. I'm the product manager here at FreightPOP, so handling all things new features, current features, and whatnot. So hit me with all your questions after the demo.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly and Austin. We'll kind of just jump right in. So let me give you a real high level kind of 10,000 foot overview of FreightPOP. Ultimately, we're a multi-mode transportation management system built for Acumatica and then the Sage 100, 300, and X3 environments, right? And so we'll get into that later and what those integrations look like. But ultimately, FreightPOP's focus is on customers that are in the manufacturing, distribution, construction, and retail spaces. So obviously, by nature of that, we're very aligned with those 4 ERPs that were aforementioned, right? And the reason we align so well with those types of customers is simply because FreightPOP provides the greatest value and the highest ROI for shippers that have more complex logistics profiles, right? Meaning maybe you have inbound shipments and some outbound shipments, and maybe you're working across modes, right? Some parcel, some LTL, full truckload, ocean, air, rail, you name it. That's where FreightPOP really shines. And so that's why we have those focuses there. FreightPOP has been in market about 8 years, although we've been around for a little over a decade. Our TMS was actually born out of a need within our what used to be our parent company, and so it was really truly built by shippers for shippers. And FreightPOP made the decision early on to build all of our carrier integrations in-house and one-to-one. And to date, we have about 1,500 and always growing carrier integrations. and that's across the modes, right? And then finally, FreightPOP has global functionality. So what that means is if you're doing an inbound container shipment from Shanghai to Long Beach, we're going to be able to help you on that the booking and the tendering and the tracking side of things, right, to be able to make sure that you know where those shipments are at any moment. And then as far as your outbound, right, we have functionality that enables us to go cross border, not only in North America but outside, transcontinental from the U.S. Outside. So true global functionality, and anybody that wants to get in a little bit deeper into that, feel free to pop up in the questions. And then I'll pass it to Holly for this slide.
Thanks, John. Okay, so FreightPOP is designed to solve common shipper headaches, but before I get into the ones that you can see listed on this slide, I want to give a little bit of history on how FreightPOP came to be and just add some context to our story so you can really understand what we're doing for shippers and how we're sort of shifting the industry for them. So it started when Horizon Technology, which is a pretty high volume shipper, started evaluating and testing different TMSs on the market. So after testing a few, the team at Horizon just came to the conclusion that the TMSs that were on the market were just not a fit for their business needs. So they were really clunky. They were a one-size-fits-all, out-of-the-box system. They were not configurable to what they needed within their warehouse. And they were just creating more problems than they were actually solving for them. So the Horizon Technology team decided to go out and build their own TMS, and that is how FreightPOP came to be. We like to say that FreightPOP is built for shippers by shippers, so we really have a true understanding of the complexities that are going on within the shipping warehouse and what a TMS needs to do to actually solve those problems. FreightPOP, one thing that makes FreightPOP really different from other TMSs on the market is that it's configurable to the existing workflows and processes of the shippers and not the other way around. So getting into these mentioned on the slide, the common headaches that you'll see in the warehouse, manual processes in shipping for all of your modes. So all of your modes, you're having to manually go in, put in the information, contact the carrier, get the best rate that you can get, log into each carrier website. It's just a really clunky, time-consuming process, and FreightPOP is completely shifting that. So within our platform, you can log in and see all of your rate prices, regardless of mode, within one screen. Warehouses are also notorious for a lack of visibility into freight tracking. FreightPOP actually has inbound and outbound freight tracking functionality, so that helps a lot with providing the best customer service to your customers, being able to let them know where their shipment is at all times. It really just changes the game for shippers in whole. Inaccurate freight building and payment processes. So the current process for determining if your billing invoice is incorrect or doesn't match the original quote from the carrier is extremely manual. You're going to have to pull up both of those documents and see if there's a discrepancy. FreightPOP has an auditing tool that actually flags when that happens. So you're automatically stopped from making that payment. You can identify when that quote and that new invoice don't match up, and that's going to save you lots of funds in the long run. And lastly, lack of data-driven insights. Warehouses are notorious for not having the tools that they need to see what's really going on in their warehouse. FreightPOP has an analytics tool that's giving them an overview of the amount of shipments that are coming out of their warehouse, how much time is being spent on them, how many dollars they could have saved if they had shipped on the lowest cost. There's just a whole different picture of analytics that FreightPOP is going to give shippers that they just normally would not have. And the next slide, please, John. Okay, so I know that's a lot of information, and that is not even close to everything that FreightPOP can do and all the problems that we can solve. So I want to give 3 takeaways and 3 things that you can kind of remember about how FreightPOP is a different TMS from other TMSs that are on the market. And the first is the complete integration into Acumatica and Sage ERP. So this means instant automatic data pushing and pulling between the 2 systems, which is eliminating the need for copy and paste and the labor-intensive data entry and human error that comes from having to do all of that work manually. The second is complete connectivity to all carriers and all modes with one login. So within the FreightPOP instance, you can shop any carrier you want regardless of mode, which is going to save just invaluable time that you would traditionally spend logging into or contacting tens of different carriers to rate shop, or just going with the first option that you get, which can often be a much more pricey option than you would end up with if you were able to rate shop quickly. The third, complete automation of the shipping lifecycle. Everything shipping related can be done within FreightPOP and can be automated. I'm going to let John kind of tackle what those specific pieces are on the next slide. It'll get a little bit more into detail, but the automation from start to finish of the shipping lifecycle is just changing the game for shippers.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Holly. Yeah, so building off of what Holly just described as kind of our key differentiators, the way that we're able to put those into practice and execute on that differentiation is by these core features, right? So we have 5 kind of pillars of FreightPOP that we call shop, ship, track, audit, and analyze. Obviously, shop is the first one. That's being able to, as Holly alluded to, quote across every single carrier that you could ever, dream or imagine, right? So not only your own carriers that you have individual, negotiated contracts with, but also FreightPOP's carriers, right? FreightPOP has carriers that we've negotiated, volume rates with, that you're able to rate shop against your own, as well as marketplace rates, right? Different load boards or different freight marketplaces. The idea behind this rate shop feature is that FreightPOP is fully rate agnostic, right? We don't really care where you get the rates from. We just want to make sure that you're getting the best rate and the shortest in transit time every single time, right? And so that's the shop feature. And then shipping, obviously, one of the biggest draws, as Holly alluded to in our differentiators, is that we're fully multi-mode, right? We're one of the only transportation management companies out there that truly do all modes: parcel, full truckload, less than truckload, ocean, air, rail, right? And so being able to do those not only in one system and not having, separate systems kind of Frankenstein together to be able to run those processes, having it in one system is hugely beneficial, but not only one system, in one screen. FreightPOP is extremely intuitive, and the automation that we've been able to build in across those modes within that one screen has proven to just be exceptionally beneficial to our customers. And then tracking, right? As Holly mentioned, being able to see where your shipments are, regardless of mode, regardless of the type of shipment, at any point in time is a must in the current, freight and logistics landscape, right? Your customers need to know exactly when it's going to get there, and you want to be able to provide the information on any delays or issues, and be proactive with getting that information to your customers rather than reactive, right? And waiting for them to call you because they're already upset. And then not to mention, as we kind of look into some of our core focus with manufacturers, obviously, when you're dealing with suppliers and vendors and materials coming inbound, it's of critical importance to know if there's delays there, because that can, severely impact, the manufacturing process, right? And then auditing to be able to pull in the invoice from the carrier via EDI and scrub that against the original quote that you received from the carrier in the FreightPOP system. That happens automatically. And a variance is able to be set, right? So you can say anything under 5% variance, just go ahead and push it through and create an accounts payable transaction in my Acumatica or Sage, okay? If it's outside that 5% variance, I want you to flag it and let me know so that I can go figure out what's going on. So that way your accounting team or your auditing team or whoever you have running that portion of your business right now, if you have somebody running it, isn't looking at thousands of shipments a month, they're looking at 50, right? So it makes a really, really big difference there. And then finally, business intelligence, right? As we move kind of forward into the information or through the information age and into the artificial intelligence age, taking the data that you have available and not just siloing it and storing it and having it, but actually being able to parse it out, drill down, drill through, and truly understand actionable insights from your data is of critical importance. Not to mention, when you're talking about a top 3 cost line item like logistics or freight or shipping spend, right? And so that's been something that's been really, really valuable to a lot of our customers as well. And we'll go through all of these features in detail when Austin walks us through all of these in the demo. But just wanted to give you a kind of a high level view of what those were. Cool. So let's really kind of start getting into the meat of it. How does this integration actually impact shippers that are on Sage or Acumatica ERPs, right? So we've talked about enhanced visibility and real-time tracking. That's hugely important when we're working out of an ERP, because we understand that that ERP is a single source of truth for most of our customers, right? We don't want to silo this data within FreightPOP and make it only visible to users that are, logging into the FreightPOP UI. And so not only do we have a native integration within Acumatica where you'd be able to do a lot of the FreightPOP functionality we're talking about today inside of Acumatica, but for all of our integrations, we write back that visibility and that tracking information back into the ERP, right? So that you can continue using that system as your single source of truth. Obviously, the order processing and carrier selection, being able to completely and fully automate that and optimize that has been just a massive benefit to our customers, right? Understanding that the data coming over from the ERP into FreightPOP is mapped in such a way to where you can completely automate your entire carrier selection and order processing, right? To where the rate shop function happens. You can set your FreightPOP to automatically ship on the best way, and you're able to automate it to do different things based on different addresses or a different customer or a different warehouse, right? That's just obviously you're just going to see a really big increase in time savings, right? Headcount, labor savings, right? And then ultimately, the amount of errors associated with fat fingering, right? Let's be honest, we're all human. Anytime a human enters kind of the equation, there's the chance that human error, some sort of mishap in data entry is going to happen. And so by taking the information directly needed to book a shipment directly from the ERP and pulling it into FreightPOP and letting FreightPOP do its thing, we're eliminating that potential risk, right? Which ultimately improves customer service on the back end. When there's no mistakes, there's much less of a chance of a customer getting upset because something happened, right? And then we obviously talked about the data-driven decision making as it relates to our business intelligence module, and then fully true automation for the entire shipping lifecycle. That's really what we kind of want to drill down and explain, that within the Sage and Acumatica environments, if you're using FreightPOP, you have the control to automate it as much as you want to. FreightPOP has a tagline: it's one-click shipping. We can get it to the point where you're able to literally just either scan or click on the order number, or the pick ticket or shipment, or however whatever process that you end up using to pull the data over into FreightPOP, and then you're able to completely automate that shipping lifecycle. And I mean truly automate it, so that it doesn't actually take boots on the ground to be building these shipments. Now, obviously, we want to work and be as flexible as possible within our customers' individual processes. So as much as you want it automated, you can. If you want things more on the manual side and you want a little bit more of that oversight, then that's something we're able to work within as well. But I just wanted to make sure that before we kind of pass it off here, that we understood that piece clearly. So with that said, Austin has been gracious enough to agree to run a demo for us. He is one of our product managers and is certainly the best person for the job. So without further ado, we'll just open the live site here and jump right in.
Alrighty, thanks, John. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Alrighty, so welcome to the FreightPOP site. So I'm going to be going over things at a pretty quick pace, but hopefully showing the kind of easy flow. So hopefully what you get from this is that the shipping process can be very easy and simple, but it can also be very complex in a lot of different areas. So FreightPOP tries to make it intuitive while having lots of functionality under the hood. So I won't spend a ton of time, but we do have a light kind of order management screen that can manage both sales orders and purchase orders. So for shippers that want to kind of batch import at once and have your logistics folks in the warehouse use that as kind of what to ship off of, that can work as well. What I'm going to kind of go on today is more of a live pullover from an ERP. So imagining you're getting like a packing slip or a picking ticket and you're scanning a barcode. So I've manually kind of created an order ahead of time, but you'll get the idea of what's going to come over from your ERP. So I pulled over an order right now, and you can see a few things happen at first, right? One, we have an address validator that uses UPS, FedEx, and Google Maps to ensure that the address is entered correctly, to ensure if it's flagged as residential or not. All important things to make sure your shipments arrive on time and for the price that you agreed upon. So you can see that for that address. The other thing that I have pulled up is if you're shipping to certain addresses or if you're shipping certain items, sometimes you want your warehouse people to remember certain items about the addresses that you're shipping to. Like, hey, remember to pack the goods in this way, or remember to put this on the pallet when you're doing it. Anything to kind of help your shippers remember some of that tribal knowledge that usually just lives in people's head can be offloaded into a system that can make onboarding new employees quite easy. So as we go down along, you can see I've pulled over one pallet. It's populated the DIMS. FreightPOP's automatically populated the freight class. If you are a hazmat shipper, we can support shipping of hazmat. You can pull over your UNID information, and you can fully ship both parcel, air, or over the road. And then you can see down here, I pulled over some product level information. So, what sales order was it coming from? Is it an SO or PO? How many quantities? Is there an item number? What's the description? Are there serial numbers attached? If you're going international, does it have an HTS code, right? If it's over 2,500 pounds, you need to file your EEI filing and your ITN number. FreightPOP can automate that process. As you move down along, because I'm doing a freight shipment, you can add all of the different accessorials that you may want, right? So your insurance amount, any origin or destination accessorials that become really important, particularly on the auditing and ensuring that your shipments show up in the right place. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to do a test pickup special instruction. And now I'm just going to go ahead and rate shop against the carriers that I have added in the account. So FreightPOP can rate against FreightPOP's own carriers, but more importantly, your own carriers, because we know everyone has their own negotiated rates, and you want to make sure that you get your live negotiated rates that you spend a lot of time working on live in the system. So right now it's calling all the different APIs that I have connected. And you could see that for this given quote going from California to New Jersey, I have 19 different rates to choose from. Okay, and you can see it's all provided in a very Expedia or Google Flights-like UI, where you can see the carrier, the service, the delivery days, what's the discounted rate. You can maintain a lot of markups in here, both at the address level, the user level, the carrier level. You can see the different carrier rating here. So we take into account on-time pickup, on-time delivery, non-conformance. So because we know that rate becomes very important, but we know that transit days and overall carrier performance becomes quite important as well. If you click into the quote, you can see, okay, what's the carrier quote number, which becomes really important on the invoicing side. It breaks down now that the freight, the fuel, and any accessorials that you have selected, so you can see your all-in cost, right? So in this given instance, I'm going to go ahead and ship with ABF. You can see here another thing that you can configure to ensure that they're selecting the lowest rate, which says, hey, you're not selecting the lowest rate. Why are you not doing that? This captures information to report on the back end. In this case, I'm going to say faster service required. Now it's going off and it's making the actual shipment request to the carrier, and it's generating all the documents that are going to be needed for this shipment. So it'll generate your packing slip, your pallet label, it'll generate your BOL. If you're going international, it'll provide your USMCA, your SLI, your Canadian invoice for going to Canada. So you can see here's the packing slip that you can choose to barcode or not. Here is your pallet label, which we made sure to put the, it's only sharing that portion of it, but it's generating your pallet label and your BOL. All of that kind of coming in your shipment confirmation as well to say, okay, great. What was the actual shipment cost that you went on? Let's ensure that that's what we anticipated. And you can see it pulls back your tracking number, which becomes quite important as you go into the next phase of your shipment, which is how do I track all my shipments, right? And so what we've done is we've broken it out across over the road to ocean and drayage, because we know that each leg you're caring about different dates, right? But it's going to capture very similar information. So you can see for this top one, the one I just did, it pulls over. It says, great, here's your tracking number. You went with ABF using the standard LTL service. And if and when this gets picked up, it's going to populate all of my tracking information in a very similar way as it were if you were to go into the FedEx website. And then FreightPOP has the logic to be able to capture, is this going to be on time? Is this late? Is there an issue? As you can see at the demo site, so almost all of my shipments are in issue status because nothing is really picking up. But it really becomes more of an exception-based tool, right? You can have it configured so that your end customer gets automatic emails from the system to ensure that they know where their shipments are at. And as we move right along to the reporting side of it, pretty soon in the next month, we'll actually be embedding Power BI natively into our application to bring better reporting to users. But I'll quickly kind of just demonstrate this lowest quote shipping compliance report. So you can see for this month so far, right, for the shipments that I've done, how many have been shipped with the lowest cost. And when I did that, how much money did I save over the next available shipment? Or in the times where I didn't select the lowest, how much money did I leave on the table, right? And if you want to drill into that specific shipment, you can see, what were the different shipments? What was the cost and the difference? If they didn't select the lowest, what reason did they give? And then more importantly, which user did that? Are you seeing a particular trend? Is a particular carrier, giving your warehouse people, donuts for going with their carrier, right? If you're someone that's sitting a little higher up in the organization. But you can see it goes down from everything from comparing different lanes to looking at on-time delivery and order status. So just about any information that you'd want is available through the reporting capabilities. And then lastly, what John was talking about is our auditing functionality. So it can automatically get audited right away by comparing what was quoted to what was invoiced. And you can set a variance and a threshold to go off of. And then anytime it comes in that doesn't tie to that, it's going to pull to this not approved section. So for example, I'll use this as an example. So YRC, now out of business, quoted you $345, but they ended up invoicing you for $400. Sounds like maybe a missed accessorial or something. You can now go in and either dispute that charge because you have the actual carrier quote, or you can go and kind of figure out, hey, did we miss something as well? And can I manually just push this along, right? We can handle some of the custom GL logic that might be needed to push information back to your general ledger. So that's a quick kind of overview of the different kind of features around FreightPOP. And I'll quickly now touch on the configurability piece of it because, FreightPOP has unlimited users. And so you can go in and create new users and you can decide, what screens should they have access to? What carriers do you want them to have access to? Do you want them to see just their own shipments or everyone in the entire company's shipments, right? Do you want to set any kind of defaults to really kind of optimize the flow within there? You don't have to, but you can maintain an address book within FreightPOP where you can handle all the information related to the address, as well as if you're shipping third-party accounts to that address, right? You can automatically pull those in. If you want to add a markup when you're shipping to that, because that sometimes you end up losing money on your freight, you can do that. If you want to add an SOP to your BOL every time you ship to that user, you can include that as well. And all of those presets get pulled in right away when it matches with that company ID coming in on your integration. You can maintain a product catalog as well to where you can have FreightPOP automatically calculate your products for you. So I use the example of, imagine you ship hard drives. You know what the dimensions of one hard drive is. You know how many hard drives fit into one box, and you know how many boxes of those fit into a pallet. So if you get an order for, say, 100 of them, you know that could create one pallet with 10 boxes and 2 boxes left over. So FreightPOP can maintain those specs and those bulk pack items and automatically calculate the shipment details, your DIMs, and the number of pallets for you to really automate that shipping process. And then on the carrier side, on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see every carrier that FreightPOP has integrated to, and you can differentiate that by mode. And then on the right side, you can see what are all the carriers that I have added. And you can see it's as easy as going in and having to add in your different credentials. You can set a variety of different constraints by the carrier level to say don't quote when you're going to certain areas. And all of that can kind of be maintained quite easily here in one screen. It takes about less than a minute to add a carrier to your account. And then lastly, on the company page, we've got 50 or 60 different admin level rules that you can configure. You can set up single sign-on for your users, all of that, which is made available to really help automate that process. And then you can customize how you want all of your documents to show up as well. I won't spend a ton of time there. And the last thing that I'll mention is we have live in-app support with people based here in the US. So people are going to respond to you quickly and on time, because we know that shipping can be an absolute nightmare. We know that navigating a new system for people at times can be a little bit intimidating. So we have lots of great in-app support that can help users as they're going through the whole process. So that kind of concludes the demo portion of this video, and we'll pass it back to the team to answer any questions that there may be.
Yes, so thank you, Austin. John, correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to go into the Q&A session now. Before we dive into that, we'd appreciate your participation in just a quick polling question. And in the meantime, you can also go ahead and get your questions into that question box or the chat section, and then we'll get those answered for you. So we're just going to ask a quick poll asking, what are your next steps? So immediately get started with the transportation management system. Are you looking to get some pricing to review internally? Is this your busy season and this is you just kind of here to learn and get some more information about what a transportation management system has to offer? And thank you for everyone who's responded so far. We're going to leave this open for just a few more seconds and then we'll dive into that Q&A session. Okay, and we'll close up the poll in just 5 seconds. So if you haven't had a chance to respond, this is your moment. Awesome. And now, Austin, John, Holly, I've got some questions for you that have come in throughout, so we'll go ahead and get started. The first question, which I think we might have touched on, is can I use FreightPOP's carriers or can I only use my own?
Yeah, fantastic question. Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, we touched on it briefly, but going back to that point of FreightPOP is fully rate and carrier agnostic, right? A lot of transportation management systems, some of our competitors, they're more focused on the carrier side of things. We're shipper focused. We're built by shippers for shippers. You're probably tired of hearing that by now. But ultimately, we don't care what carrier you use. We don't care what rate you use. We just want to make sure that you have that Google Flights or Expedia or Kayak-like experience where you get the best rate and the shortest in transit time on the best carrier possible in that lane for that shipment, right? And so to that end, to answer the question, no, you don't just have to use your own negotiated carriers. You don't just have to use FreightPOPs. You don't have to use just your brokers or just a marketplace rate, right? Any potential place you're able to get rates from, including brokerages or your own contracts or FreightPOP or marketplaces, can all be funneled and filtered into the system, and you can rate shop against all those contracts.
Awesome. And I have another question that kind of relates to quotes and rate shopping. So could we get quotes from carriers for multiple shipments across a 6 to 9 month period?
I'm not quite sure I understand that question.
I could take a stab at that. So there's a variety of different ways that FreightPOP can be set up, right? So one of them is, you can quote via API, right? The other one is, you can quote via, static rate sheets if your carriers aren't quite up to, 2023 in terms of technology, or you can spot quote different loads, right? So there's different kind of timelines of what that could look like. API rates usually stay active, meaning you can ship on them for about a day. After that, you usually need to re-quote it and get a new fresh rate. Spot quotes are about the same, usually have a few days. And then you could upload kind of static carrier rates, which is like, hey, if you've agreed on a contract, those can kind of stay within the system. But every time it's pulling back your contracted rate for that lane, right? So for as long as that contract that you have available, we're pulling the latest rate. So hopefully that kind of helps answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Austin. And if that was your question and you want some deeper information, just reach out to your SWK rep and we'll put you in contact to get that answered for you. And another question about, freight and price. So does freight cost / markup price push back into Sage sales order?
Yes.
I'm gonna let you take that one, Austin.
Yes, it does.
Awesome. And can you default certain customers to a specific carrier?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's a few different ways you could do it, right? If you have that information in Sage or Acumatica ahead of time, you can send that order over and we can map that directly to our carrier. So you don't have to necessarily even do the rate shop. You could say, hey, I know for this lane or this shipment, I want ABF, right? The other way to do it is if you maintain an address book within FreightPOP, you can set default carriers for certain locations. You can also do the opposite and restrict certain carriers to locations. All of that, which is kind of aided to ensure that the end customer that you're serving is getting the experience that they want, and that the delivering it to them, the freight doesn't become the impediment.
Okay. And if we haven't touched on it yet already, how do you integrate with carrier invoice is the question.
So most carriers do invoices via EDI. So we connect to them via EDI. So part of the onboarding process when using FreightPOP is we set up those for you generally. It's usually a part of the contract. And so then those can get flowing kind of right away. It's a pretty simple setup with us and your carrier. So we have all those connections, but usually there's a little bit of setup and configuration each time we're setting up your version of the account with them.
Okay. And there's a second portion to this. Can they then pre-select a carrier? So pre-approval of a contract carrier, I think is what we're asking there.
So on the on the invoice side of it, you can set a variance threshold to say auto approve if it's equal to or below a certain variance threshold. So say 5%, say $20, whatever you and your accounting team's comfortable with. And so if the invoice comes in at or around that, FreightPOP can automatically approve that, right? If it's above that threshold, then that's where, to John's point, like you don't necessarily want to automate that process. That's where you want the human to come in to be like, okay, hey, what's going on? Do we need to get in contact with the carrier, see what's going on, right? Did they rebill or did they reweigh our shipment when they shouldn't have? Did they tack on an accessorial when they shouldn't have? All that kind of stuff to ensure that you're not losing money.
That's great. Thank you. And so then to move, out of carriers and a little bit into the realm of shipping. So can a customer book a shipment with FreightPOP inside of Acumatica?
Yes.
And I guess also add to that, in Sage 100, in all these different ERP platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. Great distinction there, Courtney. So within Acumatica specifically, FreightPOP has two integrations. One that we call an external integration, and that's kind of the one that Austin just walked us through, right? Where the FreightPOP will basically pull all of the the relevant fields and information needed to book a shipment from the Sage instances or Acumatica and do its thing in FreightPOP UI. But for Acumatica specifically, we also offer a native integration. And so that's essentially gives you access to kind of like a FreightPOP Lite version, right? You don't get all of the full features and functions within FreightPOP just simply because we're limited by the Acumatica UI. But you are able to book shipments and quote your carriers and create these shipments and track natively within Acumatica, never having to go into the FreightPOP system at all.
That's really cool. Awesome. And then, to stay on shipping, do you have the capabilities to add parcel ground shipping in FreightPOP?
Yes, absolutely. So going back to that multi-mode, right? Any mode and then almost any service level within that mode at the carrier level is available within FreightPOP. Very rarely do we run into a carrier or a service level we don't have, but we do have an entire carrier integrations team so that if we do, on the off chance we do run into something like that, we can get it up and running really quickly.
Okay. And to continue on, do you have any full truckload capabilities?
Yep. Going back to that multi-mode, right? Full truckload's part of that. Full truckload historically has a little bit less technology available than some of the other modes like LTL and parcel. But FreightPOP has kind of, not to pat ourselves too hard on the back, but an ingenious way of kind of automating the spot quote processes that come along with full truckload. And it's really interesting and exciting. I won't go into it now, but if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how to automate your full truckload along with other modes, reach out to the your SWK rep, and get in touch with us, because we'd be more than happy to go into greater detail there.
And on that point, we can handle, multi-stop truckload as well, because we know that usually comes along with that capability. So if you're doing milk runs or you're doing multiple stops, multiple pickups, we can handle that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And then I think this is our last question, unless we have any final submissions that come through in the next minute or so. But can you just review real fast what information goes back into Sage 100 from FreightPOP?
Sage 100 specifically. Austin, I might let you tackle that one.
Yep. So Sage 100 is going to get back a variety of different things, right? So it's the tracking information. So usually the tracking number, the carrier, the service, and the cost going back to there. And then depending on how you do it, it usually goes kind of and it can be kind of segregated at the package level as well. But generally speaking, that tends to be the information that we send back.
Okay, and is that pretty similar for Acumatica as well? Is it a little bit more in depth?
Those, yeah, for the external integrations, the Sage instances, and then the Acumatica external, for the most part, that's what's going to be going back. There are, maybe some unique edge cases depending on the specific process that a customer would use within those platforms. But for the most part, yeah, you're going to get back the carrier, the service level, the cost, the tracking information, and yeah, that's about it.
Okay. That is awesome. Well, I think that concludes, and I always like to leave a few buffer seconds here if we have a last minute question submission. But thank you guys all, Holly, Austin, John, for a great and super informative presentation today. We appreciate you taking time to be with us. And just like you out there in the audience, thank you for taking a bit of your time of your day to spend with us today. We hope you found this session informative, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yes, thank you all, and thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.